I got it now.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Welcome everyone to Soul Live. My name is Trisha Kelly and this is Tom Kelly. And tonight on our show we have two very special guests, dear friends of ours. One is the Reverend Phyllis Isaac and her son, the Reverend Blake Isaac. And these two very special hearts come to us from the Quest Haven Retreat. And what's so interesting about our conversation tonight is they're going to tell us what it's like to be raised with and live in the light of a mystic. This particular mystic was the Reverend Flower Newhouse, and she was a Christian mystic. So join us in welcoming Reverend Phyllis and Reverend Blake. Hello.
Hello.
And so, Phyllis, you met Flower when you were 2. And
Yes.
then you actually were in her presence from age 7 on?
Yes, my parents found out about Flower when she came up to lecture in Oregon, where we lived. And then when I was 7 years old, we moved down to be closer to Quest Haven, and they had just founded the retreat of Quest Haven Retreat. And so we moved, and we've lived there ever since, I've grown up in that
And
work.
you still live there?
I live on the grounds now,
Yeah.
but yes.
This is a very special place in our hearts too, the Quest Haven Retreat. It's in Escondido, and I think it's the best kept secret in San Diego. I mean, there's no place that I have been to ever that has the peace and the tranquility and
The beauty.
the beauty and just the sacredness and almost palpable God consciousness there, and it's open.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah,
it's
open.
it's not like you can't go there. It's like you can come and enjoy.
Yes, it's right in the midst of the community, and yet it's separate too.
And it's large.
640 acres.
Wow.
Yeah, pristine. So, well, let's backtrack a little bit for people. Now, they know Quest Haven, which was founded by Lawrence.
Yes, Reverend Flower Newhouse and Lawrence Newhouse. They were the co-founders of the retreat and the Christward Ministry.
And that was in 1940?
1940, and so it's been there a long time, dedicated to the Christ forever.
So tell us a little bit about Flower. For people who aren't familiar, we're calling her a Christian mystic.
Yes.
What does that mean?
That she knew God. It's one thing to believe in God, but to have that experience of God is another. And that's what we're all in the work striving to be, is mystics, Christian mystics, because it's your own receptivity and experience with God that is so important. But it wasn't only her work that she gave us, but it was the way she lived her life and her exampleship, that all the time she was tuned in, you felt, to her highest, and bringing in her experiences with the inner worlds, and she had such pristine clairvoyance, much clearer than anyone that I have ever heard of or known, so that she was in touch with the angelic and world and the great souls and the inner worlds, and brought that inner into the outer life at all times, really.
And it probably with that vibration of her just being so authentic and so real and so connected and so God conscious would be this I don't know, it would seem to me that the hope that it could be the same for you, or it is the same for you and for everybody, really, right? That her opening to the inner was such that it made you feel like, wow, it's closer than I ever thought.
Well, yes, in her presence you were not only inspired by what she spoke about, but she always could see your potential, and you all wanted to live up to that potential and live at your highest when you were around her, and well, her inner connection, you just knew she had something that you wanted to strive towards, And it was a wonderful experience, and she really influenced every part of my life as growing up with that.
So being a small child and having, well, your whole family was a part of the ministry and followed the work. And so what was it like to, I mean, to actually go to church? We all go to church, and there's, you know, well, I shouldn't say, God-loving souls behind the, you know, the lectern. But what was it like to have a God-knowing soul? And how did that affect you even at a small age?
Well, you felt like that was an angel speaking to you.
Is that right?
Yes.
Like you're really seeing an angel?
I know my husband, that he was 12 when he first went to a lecture for her that she gave, and he came away saying that he had seen an angel there, you know, that was speaking. And she brought through an authenticity that you know what she was speaking was truth. And even if you didn't understand everything she said, or it was all new concepts to you, you knew that she was getting this from the source, of the inner source. So it was, well, it was a wonderful experience. Right?
A very blessed life.
That no words can really describe, right?
That's right. That's true.
And someone like that, though, obviously doesn't just happen in one lifetime, right? I mean,
no.
Many lifetimes of seeking God and preparing herself, and
which she could remember, right? Flower could remember many of her, or all of her past lifetimes, and some of them were. She studied with quite notable teachings to help her with her clairvoyance. Do you want to tell us?
Yes. Well, she came in from the angelic line, and to do a service. And she had...
That in itself is rare, isn't it?
It is rare. And her earliest lives were more in primitive situations. She was an Inca in Peru, and then as she got more grounded to the earth, and she was a student of Pythagoras, and that's where she got a lot of her training. And then she was at the time of Christ and knew the Lord Christ. And so she came back with these memories and knew them. And she was trained in such a way that she could use her clear-sightedness to bring these things through. And that was her mission, to let the people know, because back in the 30s and 40s and 50s, angels weren't talked about much, and but that was her mission, is to let people know about the angelic kingdom and to know the real Lord Christ, not just what we read in the Bible or the churches often will say. So.
And to that end, her work is very different, and we can bring Blake in on this too. I mean, because Blake is now the director of the Christward Ministries.
Absolutely. I'm the most blessed man on earth.
And what a mother and a father, and to be raised. Now, tell us a little bit of how Christian mysticism, especially how Flower brought it, is different than the Christianity that we see.
Absolutely. I often tell people, if you're going to understand Christian mysticism, you have to let go of almost everything you understand about Christianity, because it's about a living presence that is calling for the spiritualizing of all life through all faiths to God, our Savior, back to God. And so that's his kind of radiation, is to handle that aspect of God, kind of calling all life forward. So it's a wonderful blessing, which all of her, not only her insights, but her meditations, she lived. And you could feel that connection with Christ through her. So it makes you want to have a relationship, not just study or someone to emulate, but really to experience. Yeah.
Well, this is why we're so attracted to Quest Haven and to the vibration there and to Flower and to both of you, because just like her many past lives to get to her potential, I from here, sitting here tonight, I think that you both too, you joining her at such a young age, and you, Blake, I think her husband was there in the delivery room when you were coming back. But I think great ones bring back those loyal disciples with them.
Absolutely.
They need this
to
community
ground
to ground the work. Yeah.
We've all come in with a purpose, right? To unfold this. So we never understand what our linkings are, but I think those great souls come to awaken what is latent within us and to get us to really what our purpose is. And that's what I feel like. I feel like I'm coming to life here, even in my mid-ages. I'm just beginning.
You're just a kid.
A retired school teacher.
And school principal.
School principal. And that was wonderful.
And so here's the big difference. And if we think about Flower starting her work she started actually when she was not even a teenager, right? Because even though she held back a little bit of what she could see and feel, her teachers started through her writings to see her gifts and asked her to be their teacher.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, it all began when she was so little and starting to just share to other kids what she was seeing, realizing they were make-believing and they weren't seeing what she was. So that's when she went quiet. So when that writing came in the school, she was able to start pouring forth what was coming through, and her teachers actually asked her to start teaching them what she was being able to sing, because they could feel her authenticity and genuineness of it.
So that's a real mark of someone who had the kind of background that you were talking about that she had. And think of the trailblazing. I mean, she's coming in the 20s, 30s, 40s. That it was unbelievable for her to say things like, well, first of all, it must have been very challenging for her being a woman and a spiritual teacher at the same time, being very powerful, because women were not given positions of power. So she had to sort of be very comfortable in who she is. And then her clairvoyance, but then she brought in things like, for instance, like you were saying, like most Christians think you believe a particular thing or believe in the name, you're saved. She's saying you've got to open it up and realize it within yourself. You've got to do the work. That in itself is huge.
Walk the walk.
Walk the walk.
And she brought an esoteric side, which was also so new, because truth is truth. And so to be able to distill almost what I might call the hidden teachings of Christ is a lot of the teachings are veiled in a sense, but we have to look beyond that veil. And that's what she did. She just opened up and unveiled that to the world, this whole inner reality that is all linked to Christ and the masters and other lords, and to this great hierarchy that is watching and working with us. Makes it very exciting.
And Phyllis, you've had the good honor, privilege, I'm sure, to help edit those writings.
Oh yeah, edit.
Over all these years, right?
Well, I've been working on it for quite a number of years on her collected works. That's been mostly since she's passed now, but
they're beautiful books, the collected works of Flower Newhouse.
But my husband did a lot of writing, and so he was a good writer.
But isn't that nice to have in your brain now?
Oh yes.
All that wisdom, all those words.
Well,
all
I wish I had it all in my brain.
Well, it's in your heart.
Somewhere.
It's
in your heart. And you too, Blake, because you get to absorb yourself in those.
There's more, as Mom will probably say, in being able to do the collected works, it brings you back into her lectures and what she's written. And there's more than I can ever do in this one lifetime. You know? But the great privilege and blessing and gratitude to have that opportunity to assimilate what I can and to have a mother and a family that is dedicated in that way is very helpful and nurturing, supportive in that way. So I feel very blessed.
We felt like we all came in together for a reason.
Right.
It looks that way,
And even people we meet, like yourselves and others, there's reasons for those synchronicity moments. So I'm just curious who's the next person that I'm going to meet and feel a kinship with.
Well, they're all at home right now waiting to hear about this. So let's talk about, so we'll fast forward through the history a little bit. Flower and her husband, Lawrence, founded Quest Haven. The first was 400 acres, right? No power, no water, so they lived like pioneers. And they, little by little, they drew their students to them, got power, got water, planted these beautiful trees and such. And then in 1950, something very special happened that really brought Flower's mission and grounded it. Tell us a little about that.
Well, the great ones came, or the masters. Flower had always been in touch with her master from the time she was little, and she knew her guardian angel. This was, and she knew other masters too that she'd been on the inner that she had seen. But this was the first time that they came to her at Questhaven, and their thoughts came down to her, and she was able to give them out to the group. And so a lot of the teachings that she brought through were from those great ones, and it was a very special time as they gave those teachings those years. And we're working on them all the time now, because it's something that you don't assimilate in a short time. When they came, it was just awe and inspiring, you might say, but most people couldn't live it, and so you had to take a little bit at a time, or you would try. And I was 15, and it was when they came, and I was able to be at a few of those sessions.
Were you?
Yes, and that was wonderful. But you don't fully appreciate it as much as you or I would now. But
so they came in 1950, and they didn't come for a while so that everyone could study it, work it, try to integrate it into their lives, and then they came again in the 60s.
Yes,
correct?
They gave 3 years of instructions in the 50s, and then came again and had about 2 years then more, and then they haven't, then that was all that Flower could bring in through at that time.
And just so you know at home, these works of the masters have been put into 2 books that are available on the questhaven.org website, and they are, tell us the 2 books.
The Disciplines of the Holy Quest and Wellsprings of the Holy Quest.
Yeah, so both of the master's teachings are edited by Stephen and Phyllis Isaac, right?
I think on those, Flower pretty much
Did
had
Flower
done
do that?
Disciplines of the Holy Quest, particularly. Flower worked on herself. And Kingdom of the Shining Ones is another one. It's more on the angels, but that comes from you find that this teaching on the other side kind of pervades everything, but those are pretty much from the higher sources, which she did as not as a channeling, what we might think of as channeling, but more as a conscious through meditation, a conscious connection to them. So it took a lot out of her, because she had to, the best way I can put it is, rise within herself in that moment to their level to be able to receive what they were trying to give. So it was something that was very unique and very special for her. But she couldn't do it every day. It was the kind of thing that it took a lot out of her.
A lot of energy.
Yeah.
And she could see them as well, though she would see their light come in first and their signatures.
She could. It was almost like their thoughts would come in symbols as she would describe it, and that's all I have. I wasn't present, so she would see them, so she would have to go very slow to make it, and they would correct her if she even got one little word, even plural to singular or anything, to make sure it had that accuracy that they intended, and she took it very seriously. Dressing up to go to these things because of who she was about to meet consciously. So to me it's all kind of beautiful, and the fact that we have mothers and a few others that were there, it was, to me it makes it more special. Yeah.
And even at 15, what was the vibration like in the room? Do you remember?
Well, it was like you felt the power and it was scintillating. I guess is about the way you could describe it the more than anything. And we just sat there as quiet as we could so that Flower could bring this through without having outer distractions. But she was able to do it in a group situation, and then at times they would ask different ones questions, or that they could ask a question.
From the audience then?
From going around the group in there, and would let them answer questions. And so I felt like it was a rare privilege to be able to be there at that time.
Did you ever ask a question?
Yes.
Can you share it with us?
Well, one of them, and that was after I was married, when they came in the 60s, I asked the question of how Stephen and I could balance the outer responsibilities that we had, because I had young children at that time, with our spiritual, responsibilities and so forth. And the master answered that there should be no difference between combing your daughter's hair as sitting being on your knees in prayer, and that at one time you should be living at your highest. And so that was one. And I asked a question in my earlier years when I was younger about why I would get so discouraged about things. And they gave me an answer and what I needed to work on for this lifetime. And so that was...
There's a perk.
Yeah, that's right.
The masters tell you.
Direct guidance.
Yes, it was.
But with the masters, though, that is another unique thing about Quest Haven and Flower, and what you have there is that she was aware of this hierarchy, this amazing hierarchy in the inner worlds, and the masters, they served the Christ.
That's right.
Right? They help kind of work at those levels with us to get ready to be introduced to that higher vibration of Christ,
right.
Don't they?
Yes.
And that's not often talked about in the Christian world.
Right.
At all. So I think it is fascinating that she was a conduit for that.
And it shows the diversity of God, doesn't it? As it comes down, there's so much there that we could never, we probably could never understand it all with our finite minds, but...
and the great order.
Yeah, the
that
order.
There is, that
hierarchy.
God cares about all this that is taking place, to me, is just kind of a balm to my heart.
Yeah, and that we're never alone.
Never alone.
And the reason that the masters came was not to glorify themselves or anything like, but it was to prepare us to become like Flower, or to become masters in the making, which is there's another departure in typical religious teachings, is that Flower's very careful to say, don't rely on me to be this way. You need to be this way. You need to love God so much that your inner sight opens and you can have direct experience. And so she espoused meditation, didn't she? Which is, at the time, think about 30s, 40s, 50s. Did they even know what it was if you weren't talking to an Eastern sage?
Oh, absolutely. She was professing that, though, right from the beginning. In prayer and meditation, and even prayer at that time, a lot was, well, not that it all was recited, but really about not reciting prayers, but really tuning into the Holy Spirit and letting it just fill you and go. So then to take that to meditation. But she would say, even about meditation is how starved a life would be spiritually without meditation, because it is the gateway between the inner and the outer for our experiences. So you should look forward to meditation starting the day, just like you would, it should be the best part of the day. It really should.
And it is. Once you've done it for a while, it really is.
Absolutely.
Yes, that's right.
And you have some, I want to say the word festivals, but that's not a good word. 4 times a year, very special occasions, retreats at Quest Haven. And
that are open to the public?
Yeah, and I know that because I've been to some, and the creativity, like the Friday before Easter and the Friday before Christmas, and you have a summer honoring of the festival. And but so obviously she brought in the arts, she brought in music, she brought in, this understanding of that aspect of God that's creative. Because those things you put on there are unique.
Yes, they do. Amazing. Dance.
Absolutely, dance.
Yes,
music.
That was the one thing. I remember when Tom and I first went to Quest Haven, what really resonated with us was her love. Flower taught us, and you that were there, to express your divinity through your creativity, that they were open doors. And your family's very creative.
When I was just, well, probably in junior high, or through fairly young anyway, Flower had my sister Dorothy and I do spiritual dance. That was the first that we had there.
Oh, you were the first one?
Oh, nice.
Down in the Oak Grove of Questhaven, we did some, and she's always felt that was part, and so she's always encouraged to have temple dancers or spiritual dancing. And the music was very important. And then she opened up our love for nature in no other way that I would have had it anyway, and love for animals, travel. There's almost no part of your life that she didn't affect, because she was such a diverse and, well, she felt the need of being well-rounded in what you did, and not just in one-pointed. It was... and
expressed your beauty. I mean, that's where the dance and the music and your appearance, everything is beauty. Let that be a gateway. She, you know, with the dance and things, she couldn't express everything with words, but sometimes the dance or the song became, in a sense, the stained glass window that people can look to the inner world for. So that's what we try to do, particularly today, is angels. You know, how do we try to portray something like that? And that's where, when music kind of puts us in that meditative, then we can feel their presence.
There you go.
So put that with dance, then it all of a sudden brings it a little bit more to life than it otherwise would. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And I do have to say here, I would like, for those of you who are at home, if for angels have sort of been kind of commonplace now, and there's a lot of misunderstanding of the power of angels and the majesty of them. And Flower brought it in. She got it out. She learned it firsthand, being from the angel kingdom, but there was also given to her as part of the 70 who were with Christ after his ascension.
Right.
She had the memory of being Miriam. Tell us a little about her incarnation there, and that her duties sort of were given to her for this lifetime at that time, weren't they?
I'm not sure about that, but but she was...
I probably assumed it.
Miriam, and she had... her mother was a very good friend of Mary, and when her mother died, Mary adopted Flower into their household. And
Mary, the mother of Jesus.
Mary, the mother of Jesus. And so she actually grew up in that household, and the Lord Christ was much older than she was, but she assimilated, and she said his presence was such that most of that life was blocked out except for that. You know, that was the most important. But she was in that 70 that was taught by Jesus, that of the inner circle, you might say, and the deeper things. And then she was martyred, and when she was 16 in that life, and
young.
And then, but what she came in to do this time was probably why you were saying that, is that she was to bring his life through into this life, and definitely his teachings in a way that she had first-hand knowledge about. And
that was her last life before this one. I mean, it was, I'm sure, a lot of inner training taking place.
Right.
But, I mean, she would say, this is a living Christ for us today, you know, bringing forth a living quality to help transform us, to help us kind of want to find our way back home to God. And so this is the kind of thing that she came and through her exampleship lived, and to live a life according to that. So it stems all the way back to that. But angels, you know, being able to see them, being able to come from that kingdom, really to maybe change the world's understanding of them was so important to her, and their availability. And I think that's it with the masters and all those on the inner, the availability of our guardian angels, of angels of prayer, and others that are constantly working with us to help us. they can't intervene necessarily. They might in an emergency kind of situation, but they're there to lift us. And so it was a very strong command that she would speak of when she would speak of them, because we like to think that we're aware, even if we, there's angels, but to really make that a part of our life. She says you're never not in the presence of 10 or more angels. I mean, that are constantly there. Most of the time not paying attention to us because we aren't really paying attention to them, but they're looking for that spark in an individual that is coming either with God or love, that they can then work with us to kind of lift us higher. So to me, it's, and that's really what she taught, you know, is we have to live a life in harmony with that and make it. And to me, that's a great challenge, but what a wonderful opportunity.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And there's so many different kinds of angels and different names and so forth that most people aren't aware of. And because they put just in the angel category, or maybe your guardian angel. But there are so many different types. And the great ones did, the masters that did come, they gave that whole book on the Kingdom of the Shining Ones that gives all the different orders of the angels.
And how they're evolving just like we are. We're the humans, but they're the angel line. And their role is to serve God. Our role is to, well, free ourselves of self in a sense and allow God's will to come in. So it's self-surrender versus a service. And so to understand how they're wired and how we are, so that we can kind of work together.
But that's why travel and nature and music was so alive to Flower.
Absolutely.
Because she could see the life behind this three-dimensional world.
Thus,
and then I suppose you saw it through her eyes. I mean, even as a young man, you too. Like, no, she left in 1994.
1994, yeah.
So, you know, it wasn't all that long ago. And so you were able to, I'm sure, feel her authenticity when she could, some of the beautiful little things about flowers. Tell us about how she would go out to the night sky and listen for the music of the spheres. And didn't she tell everyone to do that before they go to bed at night?
You share the stories where she would look at the trees and where they touched and the...
Well, she told me at the mountains, she loved to walk, and she would often walk with someone towards the end of the day after her work was done. And she said, if you look up to the tips of the trees, the evergreens, of course, at Idlewild was where we were, and where it touches the blue sky, says that's where you can get the insights coming through. And that was one of the things that she felt was, well, that's the way she was explaining how many of her things came in that kind of a way. And then, but she would describe when we went on trips and traveled, how she would take you out at night to the Lord of the Mountain, for instance.
Now this was not in your body.
Right, night, not in your body.
So she would take your spirit out, and she would gather them to go.
Yes, as you're going to sleep. When you're asleep, and then we would go on the inner to the Lord of the Mountain, and then she would, the next day, she would describe this to the group, what we did, and of course most of us didn't remember what we did, or we might have some little inkling, but not, we had no memories of it. And she would describe the little nature beings. I remember even as a child, small child, going out with her, and she would tell you all the little nature beings that she would see in the grasses and the bushes and the flowers and so forth, and being just completely fascinated as a child and knowing that there's all that around you. And then, well, there's so much on that of her experiences that she would share. And yet she said she only shared about 1/10 of what she really experienced, because she couldn't share it all.
Yeah. And yet, some Songs of the House of Pilgrimage, which is Flower's biography, I've read it a couple of times now, and what really strikes me is that she did not have an easy life.
No.
So, as Blake was telling us, that everyone is always raising their vibration, raising their consciousness, getting closer to God. She was also, through her, she had a body that was weak, and she lost her, her and her husband were a beautiful, beautiful, deeply loving couple. And she lost him, was it in 1963?
63, yeah.
And then she raised children on her own. And
yes, he
not
had,
easy.
Lawrence had gone to Korea and worked through adoption agency, and he brought back several Korean American children, and they adopted 3 of them. And after Lawrence passed, the one that was the most difficult for Flower, that needed a father's firm hand, she had to let go back to the Holt adoption and to have another home. But then later, when Flower was on a lecture tour to Oregon, this young man read about her in the newspaper, and he went to her lecture. And then by this time he had graduated from high school, and he wanted to come back down, and she took him back, and he was then at Quest Haven for a number of years. So went into the service and then came back and so forth. But that's how she got the children. Lawrence brought back so many for the group.
The children around the Korean-American conflict had American fathers and Korean mothers, and it was not a very happy place for them to be. So Lawrence went and got quite a few of them, brought them back, and many of the families, including your own at Quest Haven, adopted these children.
Yes.
You have a son.
Yeah, my oldest son is a Korean-American, yes, and we adopted him knowing we would have our family, but we wanted to have him too, and so he's our oldest.
It really shows you that the spiritual life doesn't end in church, in spiritual writings, teaching meditation. It goes all the way through raising children, taking care of all levels of existence.
Right, it does.
So here you are, you're compiling her books. Blake is running the ministry. What do you feel together with music and the community that's there, and how you hold such a beautiful space for the retreatants that come in, different groups come in to Quest Haven to have their spiritual retreats? What do you see as the vision now in the 21st century for Quest Haven? Where does Flower's life and teachings fit in?
Well, she's going to turn it over.
Big question, I know. That was
I think it's not far off from her original vision, and I think the thing I would say is, I haven't arrived even at that. I don't think any of us have arrived at that. No, we're constantly arriving. But what her vision was, she could have done what she needed to do out of the city in a church, but she wanted a place where people could come from all faiths and connect with God. And thus, she went on a search for a retreat that actually spoke to this. She was looking in Santa Barbara, she was looking in the outskirts of Los Angeles County, and then she came down to San Diego. When she was driving over the hillsides, she just knew that this is where it was going to be. And so they purchased this place, really to be a place for all faiths to come and, as she put it, I think, to repledge themselves with God. Now, then go back out to the real world and face everything that we have to. And I think that is one of the greatest things that Quest Haven is a place for people to connect with God. Now, from this as a portal, we have what we call the Christward ministry, which is, our path is following the Lord Christ. And I think helping the world heal from different restrictions that a lot of, I think we as humanity oftentimes put things on Christ that Christ never put up on himself. So it's trying to, for us to awaken people to the reality of who Christ is in our life. And what better way to do it is not for me to tell other people what that is, but try to live that myself and find my relationship and way with Christ. So to be able to have a place now that has study groups, that has church services and different gatherings dedicated to an esoteric way of Christianity is, to me, what Christian mysticism is. It's learning how to take our walks in that venue. So to me, it is unwritten yet, but I know as every day goes by, it's becoming clear to awaken the world to who Christ really is. And it has to begin right here with me, for me to understand who Christ really is in my heart. And that is a lifelong journey, one I'm excited to take.
That's beautiful.
So Quest Haven's part of that. And I think it has a real valuable service for the world in that way. And so that, and where it will be, we'll have to kind of figure out as we go along.
Yes, Flower, I know before she passed, she said, now I'm going to be looking down and I don't want you, you to, you know, diverse from what the teachings are here, because this is unique and we need to preserve it in that way. And she wanted us to carry on her work, and I think that was very important for us to do that.
And she loved all faiths. It wasn't at the expense. It was that this is the purpose behind this. This is the vibration it carries. And so when you come with that kind of thing, it can lift it. And so she felt there were a lot of sacred places, and certainly every religion had its purpose. And as we understand reincarnation, we've been a lot of religions in our past. So this is just about unfolding the way of mysticism in this life for those who are ready for it.
Well, didn't the masters, they were very specific. I think it's on the first page of, is it Disciplines or Wellsprings? Wellsprings. One of the, I think the first page on the first chapter, or in the intro, but it says very clear, the master said very clearly what Quest Haven, the land, would always be dedicated to.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they said that they had found this place before Flower and Lawrence did, you know, for them, so it was important.
And we have guided each one of you to the place. I mean, and this is still happening today. I mean, really, when we were talking about the masters earlier, to understand how intimately they care about everybody. Doesn't matter where we are in our journey, but the intimate details to lift us. What does this soul need for their life? And so they're constantly guiding us, putting us in the families that we need to, and the situations which sometimes are difficult, but to teach us something, to shore up something within us. And we have to start looking through the world through those kind of glasses to kind of see, why is this and how does this fit with divinity's plan for us? So to me, it's a beautiful opportunity and a wonderful expression with that.
And we have people coming through the gate at all times and saying, you know, oh, all of a sudden they feel this is their spiritual home. They just feel that energy as they come through, that they know that this is where they belong.
That's what I wanted to say too, and for my last words is that 20 minutes from Encinitas, literally.
10 miles.
10 miles, and you find a hidden jewel, and you walk through those gates, and it's like walking into another dimension. But your accommodations, you know, they're simple, but they're so perfectly situated in that land. And your church is like something out of the past, but not out of the past. It's quaint, it's trees, it's nature. So you feel like you've gone into a higher dimension. So your whole body and being is refreshed completely. But what I want to invite everyone to do is that you can go on retreat there, and you can stay a couple nights or longer.
Absolutely.
And just for everything you've heard us say tonight, that vibration is still there. And really just sleeping, resting, just reading, walking in those acres there can change your life, literally. And if we could get as many people on this planet to come out and spend a few nights there, and I'm not expecting anything from them except just be in that God vibration, this world would be a different place.
That's true.
I absolutely believe that too.
Well, society has to get reacquainted with the art of retreat. Regular retreats, cutting off media, cutting off all the different...
Absolutely.
Yeah, and just going out into the country.
And how important we need that to do all that we, I mean, look at the world and all that we're facing. Boy, we need to take that time to reconnect ourselves with God to do the work that we've come in to do. And you can even come out for the day and just walk a trail.
That's right.
I know. That's what it is. But just come. It's open. There's a gate. If it's closed, come on through. Absolutely.
So well, we're so grateful we had your mother and your sisters are all members, and then yourself and your husband. We didn't even get to talk about how a Flower.
My father actually was one of the first minister the Flower ordained.
Right?
Yes, and then Stephen was, I think maybe the second one anyway.
Your husband?
My husband, Stephen.
Yeah. And then you have 4 children, one of which now is the director. So the mantle has moved through the family.
Yes, I feel
blessed.
very blessed.
That's the interesting thing is you mentioned members, and it's like, and this is the reality, there are no members. Quest Haven has been sustained literally from the moment of its conception.
Wow.
I mean, you couldn't buy 640 acres today out in the countryside of Encinitas anywhere, but that it was purchased in 1940 at a time when they paid off in the first 10 years or so of the opening of ministry. So all these years, it has been sustained by love of people that have received something. And that is how, God willing, it will forever be. It's here for the world, not for me or you. No. It's for everyone. Absolutely.
So that's what it is that I feel there. Love. I got it now.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
The way of love.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. And there'll be
special treat to have you both. Really, we're honored. And really, what does that say too? You know, because the Christian mysticism comes to a yoga mysticism place.
That's true.
Right? And as we talk about that, Flower's whole life was an example of just being in each moment with God. And that's what's radiating out, you know. And so that's the yoga goal as well. Same thing. That it's a personal relationship with that infinite loving one. And to be with that infinite loving one is the purpose of our existence every moment.
Good.
So thank you for making the long trip.
Absolutely.
And there'll be more information about how to look at Quest Haven, look for the books, and to find out where it is. And thank you for joining us. All right. Out there, how many texts getting in?